Alright, so hello everyone and welcome today to another edition of The Verdict. I am SpraynPray1000 and today we are going to be talking about Kirby Star Allies. Now this is going to be a rather short verdict, mostly because Kirby Star Allies is a very straightforward, simple game. Now most Kirby games go like this. You play as Kirby, you can float if you jump more than once, and you can copy enemies by sucking them in and inhaling them, and that's kind of it. Now, what Star Allies does to try to sweeten the pot is it lets you fight alongside up to 3 other friends. Kirby has the new ability to throw a heart at various enemies and turn them into his friends. And from that, you get the game's primary premise, which is 4-player action, where you can control up to 4 different characters, and you can throw hearts at other characters. It's kind of like a variation of Squeak Squad's ability to store power-ups, whereas the power-ups are actually your friends. And you can do a lot of interesting stuff, like you can ride on your friends and be, control them in single player and stuff like that. You can inhale them, you can turn them into statues using certain platforms and reassign them as you see fit. It's an interesting sort of twist on the usual Kirby gameplay, where Kirby is kind of a one-man army. And to the game's credit, the AI is actually not bad. The AI actually will understand what you're trying to do in most situations. So like, let's say there's a puzzle that involves like 2 or 3 different abilities, and you have these ability people in your party. The game will realistically understand what you're trying to say when you're like, okay, you go over here and do this and do that. The only thing I would say about Kirby Star Allies, talking about its gameplay, is it's a little short. Kirby games are usually short, but it's short, and I think that's probably the primary thing that's going to be a problem with it, is that it only really has, I want to say, 4 worlds. While the worlds are reasonably long, given, the fact that it's a Kirby game, for a full-on home console release in a Switch game, I'd say that's actually, something maybe they should have lengthened the game a bit more, because a lot of the game, if you hardcore play the game, you could basically beat it in like 5 hours, and I'm being generous here. And that doesn't necessarily mean the game is bad. It just might not be worth the price tag. I think that's the problem with the game. Now, the story is so simplistic that the Kirby games are kind of those old school platformer games. The story isn't that ridiculous. Basically, there's these evil leaders who want to bring back their lord. So to do so, they scattered the Dark Hearts all across the galaxy. And what ends up happening is that they go across the cosmos and take over a bunch of people. And, Kirby sets out on an adventure to basically free his friends from it. And, yeah, that's kind of it. He travels across a bunch of different stuff. Now, a lot of cool, interesting shit happens. Like between traveling far and wide across the galaxy. But, I mean, for the most part, it's a fairly straightforward type of game. There's not really that much going on here. It's not like Breath of the Wild crazy, where I could be like, oh, but there's infinite platforming because you can climb as much as you want, and you could cook food, and you could, stealth and all these things that never existed in Zelda until today. I can't really say that about this game. This game is fairly straightforward. And, I mean, it looks nice on the Switch, it plays nice, the music is great. A lot of stages have old school Kirby music, which is cool. But it's a fairly simplistic platformer, and while that's not a bad thing, and it's certainly not the worst, and far from the worst, it's one of the better ones out there for a home console, there's a reason why the genre has kind of diminished over time. Like, I would say that for the same amount of money, and you don't even have to own a PS4, you could probably get more out of the Crash Bandicoot trilogy just based on the fact that it's literally 3 games. And if you want to 100% it, it'll probably take you longer and be more interesting. So, ultimately, the problem with it is that the Kirby games are just good, but they need more hooks to it. I think that the platforming series needs to evolve more if they're going to keep it there. Now, they did try to do it by implementing 4-player combat, But I think ultimately platformers are more of a single-player style experience, meaning that it doesn't really matter how many friends you cram into it. At the end of the day, it sort of has to be a good single-player experience. Now, Mario games will try to make use of that by adding in, like, you know, the new Super Mario Bros. Series will add in new power-ups and stuff, which is fine. But it'll have 8 worlds, and then it'll have bonus worlds, which is fine. I just think that Kirby needs to actually make that jump to more worlds, if that's the case. Because if there were 8 worlds in this game of all of equal or so length, I would say, well, you know, the gameplay is kind of the same, but it's still kind of cool that they developed 8 worlds full of different shit. I think that would be really interesting and fun to play through. But as it stands with the 4, it's not really enough, I feel. So either you have to go for longevity or interesting and diversity in terms of the level design. But I make it sound too bad, right? If you like Kirby and you're willing to pay the money for it, what would I give Kirby Star Allies? Well, Kirby Star Allies, being that it's simple but still a fun, pleasurable game to play through, I'm going to give it a decent score. I'm going to give it an 85 out of 100. And the reason why is because despite its flaws, it's still a good game. There's nothing horribly wrong with it. I wouldn't say anything is terrible about it. It's just a very easy, chill, fun platformer that just needs to be longer or needs to have something else to it. I think that the length this time around is the problem with the game, the major one. And while they do have mini games and stuff, the main meat of the game, that is the actual platforming and stuff, needs to make a return. You know, the adventure part of the game is still the most important part. And they have enough Kirby bosses and enough old school stuff they can bring into this game to sort of remix it up. So I think that's the primary fault I'll give the game. I do like the fact that you have allies who can help you out. They can give your weapons like combo abilities. Like, for instance, a fire ally can give your sword fire, or your hammer fire, or you can get ice or electricity or whatever. But I don't think it's ultimately better than Squeak Squad. Squeak Squad allowing you to mix and match a lot of these abilities on your own and stuff like that. I just don't think it's better than Squeak Squad is my biggest problem. I think Squeak Squad, in my opinion, is the best Kirby platformer because of the ability for you to mix and match different power-ups on the go. Sort of like, the necessary embodiment of Kirby. There was a lot of worlds in Squeak Squad as well, which also lended to it a lot of replayability and stuff. So I like Squeak Squad more, even if it is maybe a harder game. But yeah, that's going to be it for Kirby Star Allies. Thanks for watching, and I hope you guys pick it up, because it's pretty good if you want to play a Kirby game. If not, I'll see you guys for next time.